your Bentley's Year in Infrastructure Going Digital Awards program.
Yeah.
So bring me up to speed. Connect the dots for me. What are some of the themes that we're looking at this year? And tell me a little bit, two-part question. So context about Bentley and connecting that to your background, and then tell me a little bit about the program itself.
Great. So as I've said, for the last 18 years, I've been working with Bentley, and for probably the last 15 of those, we've been doing the Year in Infrastructure conference. And in one form or another, we've invited participation from our users in certain categories. I've generally been involved in the process and power generation category, for them to submit projects that they've been working on using our software. And we've grown and adapted the criteria by which we want to measure those projects, but a lot of it now is very focused on sustainability, on environmental sustainable governance, and in those aspects leading towards things like the energy transition. And that was very much reflected in the submissions we received this year. Two of those submissions were regarding metallurgy projects that were all about really making it more efficient and cutting the carbon emissions from this very important industry. And a third was relating to development of an offshore wind farm and the very important renewable energy integration that was fulfilling.
Going digital has evolved over the years. What has it come to mean today, given the 2024 context?
That's a very good question. Going digital in the context of 2024, I think the keynotes and the presentations that we've seen today have shown that advancement from the 40 years of Bentley's existence, the start of computer-aided design as being really replacing manual drafting processes, but how that evolved into supporting different engineering and design disciplines, bringing together things like structural engineering and important analysis roles, hydrology and so on. But even so, and enabling those disciplines to work together effectively in multidisciplinary design environments. So that's always been a consistent theme. And then as we progress into asset performance, trying to leverage those digital models that have been designed, that have been created during the design phases, leveraging those to drive better asset performance, better reliability, better integrity of assets. But even so today, many disciplines remain locked into their own silos, their own way of thinking. And yet there are so many opportunities if we start to be able to bring those disciplines together and be able to see in context the engineering models and the data they generate. It allows new levels of insight, new levels of analysis. And so we see that going digital as that real progression from the earliest stages of generating data-centric models to then really fulfilling these open ecosystems, these environments that allow the data to be used in so many ways that were never originally imagined. On design specifically, so many of the submissions that we saw were looking at, firstly, existing infrastructure that's been there for a long time that doesn't have any design basis, any design context. Like we saw dam structures that have been there for 100 years, where there isn't any design context. We're able to create that digital context. We're able to apply sensors to those dams. We're able to monitor the very slight deviations in movement. We're able to then make real practical operational decisions that are supporting integrity functions and ensuring that we're minimizing the risks. So those are those are just, there are so many different examples. It's hard to name just one right now.
One of the biggest uh, themes for this year for me has been the conversation around open source. So summarize what the open source engineering evolution is in your terms, which you can frame that any way you like, and what it means for process and power generation.
So open source for Bentley is really brought together. I mean, we have the internal challenge that we have such a diverse set of software covering so many different disciplines. And so we internally needed that ability for our software to communicate between the disciplines as well. And that led us to develop the iTwin platform. That iTwin platform is used then to allow Bentley to create its own digital twin solutions, such as the iTwin experience. But also, we've then made those APIs, open through developer.bentley.com. Anyone can go in, they can learn about the base infrastructure schemas, they can learn about the APIs, they can learn about the various different controls and so on, and they can either create new applications themselves or they can integrate them into their own applications. And we see that as being such an important thing for the industry, that we firmly believe that the owner's data should be theirs. It shouldn't be locked into proprietary formats. That should then be able to be federated and brought together with other sources of information in ways that would never previously have been imagined. For example, we saw today structural engineering data aligned with geotechnical and subsurface data, aligned with hydrology data, and aligned with things like plant design data, geospatially located in context, so that you're fully aware of everything that's surrounding the facilities. And then that can be used for so many different environmental and sustainable development goals to ensure that the facilities that the owners have the full context around the facilities that have been developed, and have the ability to do levels of analysis that previously were not possible.
So what do you see as the most interesting and exciting future applications for digital systems design? And you can certainly add in artificial intelligence and its use there, but really, from your perspective, what do you think are interesting technologies that we should be looking at?
So today we were announcing OpenSite Plus, which is our first AI-powered site design, civil site design application. And what's that? That's allowing, with a co-pilot for site design users, bringing together all those different sources of data we were talking about before. But then with a few key prompts, it's able to generate scenarios, it's able to generate layouts and suggested context that can then be evaluated against lots of different other criteria: cost, carbon accounting, the land remediation, and so many other different disciplines. So what it's allowing is for engineers to be able to evaluate concepts so much faster, to be able to get to a stage of a very mature design very, very quickly. And obviously we don't want to talk about futures, but that has significant similarities that could be made available in many other engineering design contexts for Bentley.